tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be wild again.
They had a big meeting in there.
Yeah, that's the,
Their system's down.
no.
Got rain on.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
This city? Oh, you got the system. That's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my.
So the conspiracy theorists will be out in force on that one. Oh, that's convenient. It's raining, not like some
Hi
still.
guys.
Hey. Hey.
Hi,
see?
it's Marie.
Hi, Marie.
Can you see us?
I can see you. Sorry,
Oh, we can hear you.
Oh, good. I'm on my phone right now. I'm trying to work on 2 deadlines that got kind of. Today was just one of those days, so apologize for not being there.
Sorry. All we need to know.
Yep.
And they're done that.
that.
Understood. But thanks for taking a break to talk to us.
Oh, this is nice.
But you missed out on the cheese.
I know. I see you guys eating cheese. I might have to go find
eat
some
yours.
myself. I can be a cheese eater and spirit with you all. I think Peter said he was going to join online too.
Oh, okay.
You may
So
want-
have you heard of any flooding from this rain? I know that they were issuing flood watches for
Downstairs.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, really?
Yes, the council chambers got wet.
Oh.
And they have a big meeting tonight. And they fried their camera system.
That expensive new one we just got.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Literally, it was, I think it hasn't even been a year. Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oh shoot, darn it. Well, hopefully insurance will help with
These old
that.
flat roofs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said it was a window.
Oh, was it?
I heard it was the window in the behind.
Lisa?
Thank you. I'm not-
Oh, so her window leaks
Yeah, well,
and then went down the wall?
went down the wall, pulled in on top of the
Oh, no.
that's down there, and dropped some electronics and things. No big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Always, electronics and water always mix well.
Oh, absolutely.
Be quick and easy to fix, no biggie.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that with the video last weekend.
Oh,
Yeah. Masterbuilt, it's a charcoal grill, but it's visually controlled.
yeah, nice one.
Yeah.
Yeah, was.
Well, it still is. I just fried the power cable because it got wet.
Oh,
Oh, there's
light
Andy.
was on.
We are being recorded just in
That's
case.
fine.
Jason- Okay, I just want to let you know, and Marie said hi.
Hi, Marie.
Hi.
Oh,
So
we can totally
Dr.
watch.
Larson, your building's looking great.
Pardon me?
Thank you.
Oh,
It's,
I just
I'm glad there's a roof on it now. Let's put it that way.
yeah, I'll bet.
It only rained inside about three times.
Oh,
So it's all sealed up now. Thank goodness.
yeah, I'll bet.
But
That's
it's
exciting.
coming along. It is exciting.
So
May not
how
be
long
done in-
until it's done?
Depends on when you ask me and who I've talked to lately. I
Oh,
used to say Christmas. Now I'm saying February. We have a furnace that was ordered in January. They said it'll be here in October. Now they're like, probably not. Maybe November. We'll see.
yeah, that just seems like the most common thing that I've been hearing lately is, well,
It's not
windows
even
are
a
a year
furnace.
out. And,
Yep. And it's gonna be cold.
yeah.
Oh, see,
I've got a watcher. Oh,
I think it's
Peter.
Peter, yeah.
Hey, Peter.
Good afternoon.
No backlighting for you?
Yeah, I thought that the halo over the bald head might be distracting.
It's all good.
Although I still got a little bit coming from the overhead light, but I can deal with that.
Well, we got the three of us here. You have Murray on the line as well, and we're just
Yeah, we're 4 after.
5-4. Okay.
Yeah, so we can start.
Oh. This is a quorum, right? 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we had it at 3, so.
All right. Good enough. So you guys review the minutes and notes. 2 different things.
Yes, I did.
I too, I didn't see anything that, well, the minutes are pretty basic, committee in, committee out. And, I do like the notes that is very helpful,
Oh, good.
appreciate that.
If you wouldn't mind walking us through the final call to order. Please.
Yeah, all right, it is August 8th at 5:05, we have a quorum, we're called to order with only one absence. And do we even need a formal roll call?
I don't think so. We'll just note for the record that Missy Holler is unable to attend.
Oh, she is out.
Yes, she will not be attending.
Okay, I didn't know if we were waiting for her.
Nope. Oh, sorry.
All right, approval agenda, any errors or corrections to the agenda? Once sold, hearing no correction to the agenda, we'll proceed as written. For consent agenda and verbal minutes, any changes? Minutes versus notes. It's going 3 times, hearing no changes. And the minutes are as written. And move on to business, which is committee of the whole. Any objections to committee of the whole? Going 3 times sold. All right. Now, as we were talking, Peter and Marie, you guys have anything you want to chime in on right away? Kind of left with a little bit of structure. Mostly, I think from my memory, last time we spoke, we had basically talking about telling the story about why this is and what we think it should look like. Something that the planning commission can understand and hear from us, and then city council, etc. I think the notes kind of starting to capture that maybe a little bit. Any thoughts on that? I'm looking for a ish direction of the meeting today.
One of the things that I thought we had discussed last time was that Tina had set up a list of specific items within the code. And I couldn't remember whether we were going to deal with the, like you just said, the theme or the story to this, or to get into the weeds with looking at specific items. So I would defer to people's memory.
I thought we had talked about going through the code sections and to be reviewed and kind of make our notes to them. I had done that.
Perfect. I think
I don't know.
I did not email that out, so I apologize. I can pull it up on the screen, but
And I'm just going to run upstairs for a second to get my packet that I have those from last week. So just, sorry, I'll be gone for a second.
can get copies printed out if anybody doesn't have it. I made copies of Tim's and then it's already got notes on it.
They're kind of messy.
I left out
I'm just
Tim, he got back in too, and did not select mine. But I haven't sent any notes or any stuff for that. I agree that needs some tuning. I think it would be. It's called just kind of chicken or the egg.
Right.
If we have kind of an idea of what we think it should look like, then write the code to match. And then some of that is, can we, is there things we like in the code and tune it to make it look like?
I did not, I didn't do I kind of went section by section on here, took a look at some of the actual verbiage of the code. Didn't take a look at exactly how the code's written. I looked at it more of the specifications that I was requiring, and then thought we'll figure out what we wanted to require when we go and talk about the actual verbiage of the code.
Okay.
That's kind of what I was thinking, but
we all have our lens at which we look at the
Yeah.
world. So it's kind of nice to have a couple different ones sitting around the table.
Sure.
I can go to the office and print this out for everybody. Peter, can you see us or are you seeing my screen? I just gotta make sure I'm doing it right.
Or Peter, are you back from, oh, there it is.
Whoops.
I can see his lips moving, but I can't hear him.
Can't hear you.
I can see the conference room table at the moment, and this is the document that I was referencing as a nice format.
Yep,
Okay, let's
I
see.
could use another.
Okay, I will be right back. You guys can go ahead and talk about things being recorded, so no worries. I'll get copies.
We are talking. Peter, can you hear us? Okay. I kind of have the lens of, you know, if I'm not in the industry, quarter way intelligent human being, can I understand, let's say I've got a smaller space, can I understand it well enough to get through the process? Or if I'm a bigger space and I'm a building owner, which I am, do I understand enough to maintain, to keep going, to stay compliant? Because I know the code doesn't address the longevity aspect, the durability and maintainability, which Lord help if that's one thing we do that we do. That's how we accomplish that.
Would it be helpful to have, if we started if the code was set up in a manner that you have section 4 more general requirements that would pertain to how what you need to know as a landowner or a
Business owner,
business owner, whatever,
somebody with landscaping.
versus, you know, the minutia of the actual code that Marie and I and, you know, the professionals are gonna be looking at.
Well,
So,
to be
and
truthful, I don't think they should be very far apart.
well, but there's things that in the code that will pertain to an owner versus a professional, you know, trying to put together a plan, I guess.
This is true. I guess it depends on the scale of it as well. It
Right.
depends on the zone.
Right.
There's a downtown corridor, which I don't think we've been asked to touch.
Not yet. Yeah, we can if we want to, but yeah, it's just more to get into.
The general commercial and industrial. I feel like as I've read pieces of it and I've looked at elements, I don't know if the code matches up well with maybe what the writers intended. Either that or, pardon my French, the writers are assholes. But I've helped write code, sometimes that's true.
Yeah.
But not usually the case. So you had a vision, if they wanted it on paper, it was what came out, came out.
I guess what I was saying, I guess where you'd have a section that's kind of pertaining to small projects or where you don't need to get a landscape architect involved. It's up until that point, because once you go beyond that, to me, you have a professional looking at the code,
So you have
so it's a totally different,
smaller, easier projects.
or something like that.
So if we kind of had the spectrum, you got the small,
There is a point in the code at which you
yeah,
have to
It's
get a
5,000 square
Yeah.
feet.
So
So
you
it's
have
special.
but it's for a building.
right.
Yeah.
Or
And
so
It's the building.
half of it's acreage requirement.
We took that out.
Or good, okay.
Yeah, because we were running into small buildings on large like an acre and a half, and so it's triggering the requirement. So we did take that out this spring.
And I don't know. And maybe have some,
Maybe what needs to be done is there needs to be some sort of easy to read matrix or something that when somebody comes into the planning department, you know, Tina can pull it out and say, okay, how big is your building? And then they can just follow it, because matrix seem to be fairly understandable to people who are not in the industry. And I think reducing the confusion on the owner's part could potentially be a huge benefit to everybody. Because that seems to be one of the things that I hear quite a bit of, is the owner was not entirely clear about what was required when they came in, because they couldn't understand the code.
I was just looking through the Anchorage, the Muni code there, and Marie's right. There, and they actually, what they have in there, I thought half an hour that I spent doing it was a pretty good, and I've looked at it before, but they've got a pretty good description of landscaping type, L1, L2, L3, whatever. They have a lot, they have a matrix that just says, this is your use. This is how big it is. The L1, you provide an L1, you provide an L2, or whatever. And then you can go down and dig into the minutia of all that kind of stuff. So it's just like anything in the building code. We have tables that we look at in there. It references something. Then you go back and you look at the specific sections that are referenced in those codes to get the details and stuff.
Yeah, we do have that. I have that on the list. I think Peter brought that up at the last meeting.
Yeah.
So I have that on the to-do list, is to definitely look at how we could show it in a table in addition to the words.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, table gets you at least initial understanding, then you got to go to the text for the
Right.
nitty-gritty details, but at least gives you an idea.
And the nice thing with this is pretty low hanging fruit, because it's just graphically illustrating what you currently have. And then maybe there are a couple other semantics that get cleaned up to allow easy reference between the two.
and this is, oh, this is Anchorage.
Yeah,
okay.
this is
Yeah.
Anchorage, right? So it wouldn't be near as hard for us because we don't have near the zoning districts they do.
Right.
No,
So we're only dealing with RR, commercial,
industrial.
industrial.
And do we have a definition? I apologize. I used to read the code all the time. Now I for some reason I've gotten out of the habit. But do we have in Wasilla a definition of the different types of landscaping, L1, L2, L3? I know there's perimeter, there's parking lot perimeter, there's islands, that kind of stuff. But are we looking, do we have a way so they can look at a matrix and then just go and see that definition of what?
We
what
can,
all this-
yeah,
That's,
we can,
that's what I
we
The-
can take each one of those and
Yeah.
put a code by it. and
The-
then it would
the-
reference.
The way this directly applies to Wasilla is L1 is really the equivalent of your parking perimeter and your site perimeter. That's the way Anchorage works. And then L2 gets into buffer and screening. So L2 would relate to your buffer section as to how it gets applied. So the Wasilla version of this table would be really straightforward, and it doesn't require much change.
Mhm.
But realistically, I think, Tina, you'd have L1 and L2, and you might have L3 for a distinctly different situation.
So let's talk about, if I may, since we're talking about matrices. And I'm trying to think of different things. I think when I like looking at property, comes down to who you're next to. If you're next to two other commercial properties, it maybe should either look seamless or just kind of flow. If you're butted up against industrial, does anybody care? If you're butted up against residential, definitely it's time for some buffering.
Mhm.
So that's living in commercial. What else is there? And how complex does it need to be in a town like Wasilla?
One thing that I think is confusing to a lot of people is in some commercial zones, you may be able to do multifamily housing or something like that. And also is that they think of that as being a residential use instead of a commercial use.
So start with
So start with,
zoning.
yeah, start with zoning and then, I mean, when you look at where do you need buffers, that is based on the zoning. It's not actually based on the use of the property.
Well, to a certain extent,
But
well, that's where it gets really into the.
Yeah.
Gets good.
Well, and that's the distinct difference with City of Wasilla. City of Wasilla landscape code is based on use.
And use is zoning. Okay.
But use is zoning, but zoning isn't use.
Right.
Kind of,
Kind of. Zoning is what could be used.
right. 'Cause
And
you can't have residential in a commercial zone,
you can and do,
or, yeah, or vice versa.
Yeah.
But-
Kind of thing. But
rural residential,
Rural residential is a zone. It's
Right.
in and of itself.
right,
Commercial or like whatever. You could have multifamily housing in commercial and so all of a sudden, is that a residential use or is that a commercial use or is that, and that triggers the buffering requirements and that kind of stuff. So
then my question is, if I have a if you build residential, like high density homes
Mhm.
or whatever
Mhm.
in a commercial use area, why does the adjacent neighbor have to suddenly bring their standards up or change dramatically for you?
They don't have to,
That's why I'm making sure that we
Yeah.
communicate here.
right?
So if
But
you're
if-
talking
what
use,
happens is that if it may be going the, if I
The inverse that triggers.
If I provide a residential project in a commercial zone, do I need to, and you're putting up buffering, is that buffering required to separate the commercial from the
There's
residential?
no
or is it-
buffering required.
Okay.
There isn't any buffering required. It's to protect the less intensive use from the higher intensive use.
right,
So if residential's already there and there's a vacant lot next to it that's zoned for commercial or residential, and you want to develop it commercially, then that commercial developer must put the buffer, the screening and buffering between them and the residential use that was already there.
now is it a residential use or is it a residential zone?
Nope, it is the use.
So the issue would become then is if you had a commercial property, two commercial properties right next to each other, say. One person wants to develop multifamily, so they don't have any requirements to put a buffer.
Yeah.
If somebody else wants to put a commercial on there, now they have to put a buffer because
So
somebody, even though it's zoned,
two lots, 3 lots in a row, and it's all zone commercial.
yeah.
I've had my lot for 10 years and I got stacking up enough stuff. So if somebody sneaks in and puts in a 3-story residential use, they just made my project more expensive because I'm next to different use. I understand that that's the way it goes somewhere, but I don't think it's fair.
But I will say this is why our code requires a use permit for residential to go in a commercial zoning district. Because
I
of
think they
these
should
issues
participate.
of landscaping and noise, and is this the appropriate place to drop residential? Is it gonna change that character and impact future development? I'm not gonna say it's a tool that's been used heavily by the planning commission or staff in the past, but that's part of why you have that. It's not a by right. It's not permitted by right to do residential and commercial.
Right.
So, yeah, so that should be looked at and factored in when you're approving it, and then the commission could put the requirement on that residential
If you're gonna
developer.
you're gonna apply a use outside of its zone. Put residential and commercial, because when you try and put commercial in rural residential. Or excuse me, in R1, no.
You can't do it. You can pretty much only do it in R.
Yeah.
And the commercial. With the exception of a daycare or church, you can sneak those in RM.
Yeah,
And maybe R2 for a daycare, but it's very limited. It's mainly just RR and commercial. So RR is that wild child that's out there all over the place.
Mhm.
And you don't know what your expectations are. It is by definition a residential zoning district. It just allows commercial within it. If you meet certain other criteria.
gotcha.
So it's not intended to be a commercial district.
And So in theory, we have. So if you build residential inside of a commercial zone, shouldn't it be part of the buffering?
You can make it their requirement.
I think it'd be fair. Because if I'm commercial and I butt up against residential,
You have to provide.
I provide the buffering,
I guess it,
lots of it.
And if you're thinking
guess-
about zoning as protecting the quality of life as one of its reasons for doing so.
Yeah.
Providing if you're residential building it up against an existing commercial project, you're gonna. The idea is that you're buffering your property from the neighbor.
Right.
And,
Well,
and that's your quality of life that you're trying to maintain.
yeah, if you're residential.
And what you're doing, if
Commercial.
you're going the other way, where you've got a residential and you build commercial, then you're trying to protect the residential from the more intensive commercial use.
Correct.
But if there's already an intensive commercial use there, then it should be up to the residential guy to be able to protect his property.
And
That's
it
what
is
we're
their
trying to do.
requirement right now.
Okay.
But it doesn't capture the one that you guys talked about before, meaning if it's
Yeah.
commercial zoning, they slip through with the use permit and put residential in there, and there's a vacant lot beside them, when that the owner of that
Yeah.
vacant lot comes in, then they get tagged with the buffering. So I think that, I mean,
All it's fair.
yeah, I think that's
When-
something worth exploring for
And
sure.
unless
there is,
they rezone, which in that's difficult too.
It is very difficult.
Because when you're in a homogeneous zone area and somebody sneaks in there and says the use is different, even though the zoning is not changed. That kind of spills over the neighbors. It sucks.
Right.
I don't like the idea. But if I'm a commercial developer, because some areas are starting to see, commercial residential,
Mhm.
those mixed use type facilities, which a lot of people are great, but we're still subject to the commercial aspect of it. And if you're gonna live there thinking it's anything but, maybe you're the fool. So just trying to keep that even for people.
Well, Tim, you worked on a project that was residential next to commercial in a commercial type zoning district.
Aspen.
Well, I wasn't gonna name it, but okay, you went ahead and said it. So, okay, I'll throw it out there. So what, I mean, I'm just gonna be the devil's advocate or make you be the devil's advocate. I remember the site visit, why are we doing this buffering between the commercial when it's not required?
Up on the north.
Yeah,
corner.
yes.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same thing, honestly.
We can name names.
We were, yeah, and we also talked about though, because there is it is right there up against West Hill Fish Hook, and that was one of the main things is to enhance the landscaping along West Hill Fish Hook.
Oops, too far.
And it's kind of in that, but yeah, we did say we need to put a buffer in because there wasn't one there. For
Well, it
commercial,
wasn't required,
But we did it.
but then I think it's going away now because
Well, we brought it around the corner, but I don't,
yeah, it was this piece
Yeah.
that
we added a
did
fence.
away with.
Yeah,
So this is a multifamily apartment complex sitting here on Wasilla Fish Hook, and then this is a commercial strip mall right here.
And that's inside the city.
It is inside
Okay.
the city. And then, let's see.
and then we got residential to the northwest and north.
And then zone commercial, so
So
this is
lot
an
four-
ideal site.
Lot 4 over here, is it residential or is it commercial?
There's nothing on it right now. I think
Oh,
it
it's
was
zoned.
used. Is.
You're here, no, no.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
Which one's you? Okay, so,
So we have residential to the zone to the north and then commercial to the west.
and the
And that's
south,
zoning or
the
use?
east even. Zoning,
That's zoning.
commercial zoning to the east, west, and south. And that strip mall actually is sitting in RR.
Yeah.
So there's you a scenario of rural residential with commercial under 10,000 square feet. So see, the question came up, the strip mall was there initially when the plans were drawn, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, it showed a buffer between the residential and the commercial.
We had a type B buffer across the whole
Right.
northern property line, yeah.
But then in looking at the code, it actually did not require it because you were the residential use. And if you choose to buffer, that's great. And if you choose not to, it's not required.
Right, I think we reduced it down up to the corner,
I think you left
but
a
we kept
fence,
the
didn't you?
fence,
Yeah.
kept the fence all the way to the property line, the middle property line. Yeah,
And it didn't trigger anything for the strip center. They didn't have to do anything along their boundaries because this residential coming in, but he did take a commercial lot, which means this one's commercial, so theoretically in the future, although I think there's enough screening and buffering, probably natural,
yeah,
but if you assume this was a vacant cleared lot, they would be required, if it's commercial, they would have to put the screening and buffering between this multifamily.
yeah.
Even though that's zoned commercial.
Yeah, it's own commercial, but then over here, you come over here and I think this is residential,
There's a-
residential and commercial.
Yeah, there's a multiplex
Oh,
of some
residential
sort, and then there's also like a trucking company or something like
Oh, yeah, multifamily's on the front. So the blue one right there is multifamily. So if this were commercially developed, they're gonna have to screen here and here. Or retain natural vegetation. There's not enough on this side to screen. They'd have to supplement. This one, they may be able to retain the 16 feet there.
that. Yeah. There's easement there, that's clear, you can see it on the left side.
So- Here's where, and you're telling me that's code, and I'm telling you that we're writing code. Here's where I have friction with that. Let's say I own lot 4 and you own lot
Yeah.
13 next door, and you clear up to the edge.
Yeah, like the, yeah.
But then I gotta waste and I want a trucking company or whatever, and I need to arrange my yard. And I had that commercial lot before you did, which you snuck in there quick.
And got my use in it.
Pull the
That's what
permit
you're saying.
first,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Now I get
So
the
if-
shaft because I have to deal with the buffer.
yeah.
If,
I think it's fair to say, if you're changing the use outside of my opinion, you change your use outside of your zone, you should be involved in the buffer. Or say, I don't care.
Well, I can say technically, public notices go out to the property owners within a 1,200-foot radius, assuming they actually read their flyer, and they should be put on notice that.
Fair.
So then, yeah, you should be able, yeah.
and
But-
so speaking to the recommendation you just had, is one of the pivotal things in code is you're trying to ensure that future land use or land trades are fair between future owners or developers. I think that if you say a commercial zoned lot is developed as residential, I think that you're right. There should be included buffer on that property, because then that doesn't impact adjacent property developed in the future. And
So-
same thing then, that buffer might also be required on the commercial, but I think the residential should include that, would be my opinion.
But you could also, on the same, if you're gonna put it on the residential who, in the inverse, wouldn't have to do that. I guess you could say that they could then, I guess,
So.
give away the requirement that the commercial would have to screen it.
So the property, let's say the whole area here is zoned commercial.
Yeah.
But residential is a permitted use within,
Right.
Yeah,
but it's not the primary use.
Right.
So that's where it's happening is that, well, if you want to use a permitted use within a residential as a permitted use within a residential, seems to me the residential guy should be the one that provides the buffering from all the other.
yeah, and this
Or get over
one
it.
in particular, we ended up enhancing the landscaping along Wassup Fishhook. Because we're, as being on a major road frontage, it's commercial, and it's a commercial zone.
Mhm.
We put that additional landscaping in there to buffer the residents from the road noise. And then also make it a little more appealing.
Since that's,
But that, well, no, well, right, but I mean, that was your, I'm sorry.
That's
I mean,
No, I know.
yeah, there's-
I'm just saying the code
Yes,
didn't require
yes,
it.
the
The
code
code
didn't
did
require
not
it, but it
require it,
was-
but the developer
You have to yell louder.
put that.
Yeah.
I'm just
Can you
going to say, so a question for everybody is that it's a fascinating tangent within things, and I think that we should discuss these zoning aspects, but I think they're perhaps deeper than the low-hanging fruit we referenced last time. So I'd just ask if we'll certainly come back to this. I think it's important. but if we might go through that spreadsheet, if that is our goal for today.
Thanks for keeping us on track.
Yeah.
I think we just started talking about that.
Yeah.
And I concur that, once we've, finished the low hanging fruit, there might be other things that we'll come into that need to be refined or modified to further make Wasilla better. I do concur with.
I go ahead.
Peter, but this spreadsheet here deals with the minutia as
Yes, it
opposed
does.
to the general and then drilling down into the minutia. So I'm kind of thinking that,
Well, this discussion applies to at least the first and the third in my head. Maybe even all the three of the first ones, because let's say again, I own lot 4 and I have plans for that. You own lot 13. And if I haven't, and let's say I've owned it for 20 years scenario, and I get an announcement that says, oh, we're going to build something here. And I go, we'll have fun with that. Well, if I don't read the code, if nobody told me that I'm going to get shafted with whatever buffer, and I didn't come make myself heard, and how am I supposed to, when does me knowing landscape code as a property owner that didn't have it before, when is that, how's that fair?
Right.
And this is in grand theory. So, when you start to get into these, we're really back to arguing about what that says.
Yeah, you're actually on page 3 talking about the screening and buffering.
Yeah.
I'm even on page 1, preserving natural vegetation,
But that one has to do with just in general. So you're
Right.
specifically talking about screening and buffering between uses. If you wanted to like knock that bullet out since that's what you're on.
page 3.
And I will mention, I was looking at the buffers, and other than the width of the required, there's not, especially for type A buffer, the actual plant count actually goes down. From
Yes.
just perimeter site.
Mhm.
Other than
Then
that.
then with the change proportion of evergreen.
Right. And then the type B buffer isn't really that much more, other than again, the width and I think it's an extra tree. It goes to 21 per 25 feet instead of 30
Yeah, it's actually way less than the perimeter.
or 20 something,
Yeah, there's your buffers right there.
but
Can you see it, Peter?
Yeah, and I've got my
I guess
cheat
the
sheet.
question though is if you have two commercial uses right next to each other, you don't have to put
That is true.
perimeter.
No,
No buffer, you still have to have a perimeter.
yes, perimeters for everybody, multifamily and above. Because that's your street appearance, to the city. That's that area of the city.
Your area between,
Right.
so between my building and the city,
Excuse me for interrupting.
but end.
We have 2 people want to listen.
We have 2 people, Jesse Sumner and Dimitri.
Welcome, gentlemen.
They would like to weigh in on your,
Are you here wanting to contribute, or you're here wanting to listen?
it's gonna see you.
both.
Yeah.
Okay. We, come on in, find a seat. It's a
The committee of the whole.
committee of the whole, so contribute as you can. There may be some where we wall you off for a minute, but I'm sure, I know a little bit about both of you, because I grew up here too. So I'm sure you have things that you want to share. Have you followed along with what we've been up to so far?
Saw a proposed rate, I think.
Not from us.
Okay.
As a meeting, what, 3?
Meeting 3. So
The proposed rewrite was adopted in February, March of this year. So it relieves some of the requirements, but now they're looking at a wholesale.
what we're here doing is trying to make sense of it all for human beings.
Yeah.
How's that for an answer? We've got two participants dialed in with us. I don't even know what's called this, conference in with us. And we're trying to really establish what it is that makes sense in the world. We can't go to straight nothing and make it like the old ways, and maybe some of our current stuff's been a little hard to understand and deal with. And I'm here because I'm a property owner and I've done some development and found it difficult. You guys are here because they do that for a living. And they're in it to their eyeballs. So we're trying to find something that works for everybody. Or excuse me, not everybody. Something that works and is useful for most.
I also think it's something trying to get it, so get the code, the understanding of the code to a point where it's pretty straightforward. And I mean, if you're coming into the area and you're looking at buying a piece of property and you want to know what your general requirements are, it's easy enough to go into the code and just see right up front, this is what's kind of expected of property owners in these areas to, and everybody being a property owner in this area, this is what everybody is.
Be able to look at
Follow, just like
thumbnail sketch real quick.
thumbnail sketch real quick so they can make a decision on what, or they can be aware of what they're going to get into when they start to develop anything here.
Great. And then there's the mechanics of the code, how to look at it, how to participate with it, and then there's the arguments about what's in it. Is it 2 trees or 4 trees? Right? Are they 2 feet tall or 4 feet tall? That's what we can start on. About those things. So that's how we're trying to break it down and figure it out.
And at this point, we're just landscaping. We're not any of the other provisions of the code. So it's just the landscaping stuff right
Yeah,
now.
we're in one section.
It's for multifamily, 3 and above, and commercial
Mhm.
and industrial, not single family or duplex.
Amount of that. So we were just busy arguing about adjacent uses and buffers within the same zone. That's what we were arguing before you guys showed up.
We were sitting downstairs meeting that.
Oh crap!
And then the Glenda came and says like, I think you guys are in the wrong room. And after that, so we would have been here from the beginning, I guess.
Well, you only missed just a little. Probably arguments heard before.
The audio is posted on the city's iCompass website from this meeting and every previous one. So if you need to sleep at night, you have trouble sleeping at night, you can go up
We'll
the
bore you with that.
recordings and listen to what's happened and you can get caught up.
So so Marie, Peter, you guys still with us?
Thumbs up.
Okay,
Yep.
good. Sometimes I can see your face, but I'm not sure if you can say anything. So I feel a little bit like blind people describing an elephant right now. Everybody's got their corner talking about things, but where to attack this to be able to get a movable product.
Mhm.
So we talked about matrices. Can we argue one out? I mean, is that a good spot to start and then deal with the code after that? So I could build code off a matrix if we can argue one out.
What I think I'd recommend is the approaching it from the low-hanging fruit point of view. We talked about it. I think the big ticket items that we've heard from people have been the size of the plant material based on cost. So they're kind of a little bit like Andy was saying, getting into the weeds for this. I don't know exactly where to start, whether we start big and work small or start small and work big. But I know that from our clients, the main comments they have relate to plant material size and cost, the mulch types and not allowing rock mulch, and then the presence of perennials. And we discussed that last time as well with Tina, commenting on perennials, etc.
Can I ask you a survey of all of you? So I just know me. I'm the developer for me. I know Target, their use district, they got big crap. What size clientele do you guys normally work with? Who are you working with? Who are we talking to?
I'm everywhere from your size up to, like I did Sun Mountain over there, so, I mean, everything between too.
Okay, so the broad range.
Yeah.
We're not, I asked you guys questions too. What
Yeah.
size? Have you done development in Wasilla?
Yeah, working on it.
Working on it. In general terms, what size square footage we're talking?
What I'm working with is just a half acre to an acre.
No, building wise, what size building?
I have where I'm working with existing like office building that is only like about 3,000 to 4,000 square feet.
Okay, so under,
Small.
under
In
10.
East downtown.
Got it. Oh, man.
I know,
More.
that's why it's small.
Okay. So that's kind of the range we're gonna speak to. So back to low hanging fruit. Peter, or whoever else.
Well, I think what Peter is getting at, and I think I kind of agree with him, is seems like we want to figure out what we want the code to require. And then we go from there, figure out how to make, how to organize it, make it.
Okay.
Make
So,
sense.
and what we want the code to require.
In with tree size, percentage area, whatever.
Which in other words, what looks good and what's healthy.
Yeah, yeah. And then from there, we can figure out how we want to organize it in actual code.
Okay.
But going through this spreadsheet will get us to what we want to see, I think, or the changes we want to make. And then we can figure out how we want to organize it. Right? Does that make sense to you, Peter?
Yeah, I concur with that, and I think the just to speak to the code. There's parts of this that the clients have the biggest issue with. The code itself, I think it's fairly well written with what it is. So if we can get through the specifics that make people happier and then refine the code that it's easier for every person to understand it, and then get into things like the commercial buffering, I think that maybe that order of operations might be nice.
I agree with Peter.
So what do people have problems with when it comes to dealing with the code and understanding it? What do your clients complain about?
I think that, and I think for this sheet, this gives a good order to it. If people would concur, because if we can go through this and just for each of these items, we've heard issues or no issues. So maybe that's what we would record within this. And if there is an issue, we talk about how to solve it.
Right.
And I think a good example is for the 15% of total lot area, we're not necessarily hearing any issue with reserving 15%. I think the only issue that we've seen is there's no quantification for how it's landscaped. We know it's not supposed to be all grass, some trees. So that's the one thing that's open to interpretation for it that we've heard.
Okay.
And I think the interpretation is where people that are not experienced with this profession are kind of getting confused on, because they can't go to the code and say, this is exactly what I need.
Yeah.
And then so for my first question for the group would be, is anybody hearing a complaint about 15% itself?
There's a misunderstanding about it, right?
So the one challenge is you're in a downtown district, which is way different. We're not even talking about that. So I'm not cutting you off, but like you come out of that, then what is 15%? How many square footage? So an acre is what, 40,000 square feet-ish?
43.
So, we're gonna call it 40 for math.
43,560.
Mhm.
So in a 40,000 square foot lot, 10% would be 4,000 square feet.
And what we found is that the perimeter landscaping and the parking interior, if the perimeter landscaping contributes a significant amount to this until sites get larger due to the the area to circumference ratio on them. So the 15% is pretty well done by perimeter landscape.
Okay. So what defines landscaping? Is my mulch and retaining wall and everything behind it, is that landscaping?
We've interpreted
Everything
it.
that's not building and not parking lot, is that landscaping?
That's what I was going to say, is permeable surfaces which are not attributed to another use.
So if it's not asphalt, concrete or building, we could call it landscaping.
If it's
not-
that simple, then.
If it's not parking. Maybe we're writing stuff down.
Okay, oh, I thought you were
Can we-
asking.
So
Okay,
can we
sorry.
go to the actual definition?
That's what I was gonna look and see
Yeah,
if there was
I mean-
one.
There is one, yeah.
I'm trying to explain it to a 12-year-old.
So the definition of a landscaped area means all areas shown on the approved landscape plan that contains required plantings such as trees, shrubs, flowers, hedges, etc., including the mulch and other landscaping features that require maintenance and retention in perpetuity. They're often protected by curbs or other structural barriers and may be located along the perimeter of the site, within the interior and exterior parking lots, and as screening and buffering between incompatible uses. This does not include sidewalks, walkways, patios, decks, fountains, or other pervious or non-pervious hardscape unless specifically permitted within this chapter. And the only place that's permitted is downtown for hardscape.
So one
So
of,
I just
It's a
turned
planting
myself
area.
by the word.
well, what I heard was that you've rolled in the other types of landscaping, but you haven't definitely said this contributes to the 15%.
Oh, it says it in the chapter,
Okay,
but it can
Did
be
you
more
catch that?
clearly said.
That, I have a simple question. Is the area that's never been touched, natural since creation, is that considered landscaping or not? Because there's a simple yes or no could be to that.
Great question, shouldn't it be?
I think it
Yes.
should.
If it's preserved, yes, it does count,
Well, it said that requires maintenance and perpetuity.
You gotta water it.
right? But that's true, you're right. The definition does not say that for landscaping, but within the landscape chapter, it does give you credit for it. If you retain natural vegetation.
So
So it's within the actual regs where it gives you credit,
As long as-
exemption to that.
This is leading to the making it simpler to understand. It tells you that, yeah, somewhere later on in the code, it says perimeter contributes to that 15%. But if you look see, well, what's the landscaping to start with? I think that's part of the problem, is it's just
What
hunting
is
out that
landscaping?
stuff and what contributes to it, and upfront rather than having to dig down later on
Yeah.
and see if it.
Well, definitions don't
think.
usually have your regulations in them. Those are just if you're not
But
sure.
I mean, even just saying perimeter landscaping. Parking lot landscaping, landscaping is part of your landscape. Your 15%, they're talking about were you talking about just what is landscape?
That's the definition was what I was reading
Okay, I'm talking about
in the text.
what in that 15%, what contributes to the
I
15%?
want to define it so human beings understand it that don't work in the industry.
I work regularly in different kinds, yeah, but when I was listening
I'm
to
talking this industry, not your industry. I'm trying to watch out for you.
So for the minimum lot area to be landscaped, a minimum of 15% of the total lot area must be covered with landscaping. The landscaped areas required in this chapter apply to the minimum lot area to be landscaped. So we don't hear many things about 15%. I think this is one of the sections that probably works, with the exception that it doesn't state like 1 tree per 1,000 square feet or something.
Well, I was making sure that the definitions are clear to start with because they matter. So what is landscaping? You get down to it, basically everything that's not a parking lot, a sidewalk or a building or fountain, as we've discovered. Okay. So if I said that to you, would you understand? It's not a parking lot, a sidewalk or a building.
that's not what it says, though.
Well, but if I said that to you, would you understand?
If there was a number and says these are things do not consider landscaping, then we already know to that everything else is.
Okay.
Because once we started like what is, then we could really create a list and then, is this it? Is this it? What about natural grass?
Okay, so stuff you can check off.
Yeah. So, but if what is not,
Your snow storage gravel pad, not necessarily landscaping. Where is it?
Well, if it's a if it's a grass area for snow storage, it counts.
Okay,
Simple.
if it's not, okay,
And it's maintained.
does maintain. So if I plow grass onto my front lawn,
Snow on your
Grass.
front lawn, you mean?
thank you. Yeah, I put the white stuff on top of the, what used to be green stuff. That's still landscaping, but if I push it into my parking lot or my gravel area, that's whatever, that's not landscape. I mean, yeah, I dug way down into the minutia, but, so making sure that it's clear as to what is landscaping.
Could it be simple as a building, sidewalk, asphalt and gravel area, or
And
then
then
that's
what is-
everything else is not, then that's,
Yeah. What is it?
Maybe what we need to do is incorporate impervious surfaces. And that kind of defines a lot of information and then maybe perhaps it includes landscaping can include things like pedestrian plazas and things like that that are pedestrian oriented.
Okay, so some hardscapes that actually look good.
Right. Yeah, pedestrian related infrastructure or something.
Because I'd much rather see a bench and a little patio surrounded by some vegetation and call that landscaping than a split rail fence. I got a special place in my heart for split rail fences. Light them at both ends.
I think the thing to remember too is a lot of this landscaping is not, again, it's not downtown, so it's not a walkable.
Right.
It's really not.
But it's also commercial.
It's commercial, but it's not walkable. So the whole point of landscaping on a commercial lot, well, not the whole point, but two of the key points is to screen and buffer that hardscape, that parking lot that you have, and to make a site more aesthetically pleasing from the roadway. It's just there's all kinds of studies and all kinds of supporting information to show that when a business is more attractive from the road by putting landscape in,
It's more traffic.
it attracts customers, it attracts other businesses to
Don't
come and
disagree.
invest there. Yeah, so it is an aesthetic piece. So the putting a bench could certainly happen in there. I mean, you could put a bench in there and form that. Nobody's ever asked to, because typically the perimeter is so far away from that building that it just didn't make sense for them, but it makes sense up next to the building. And that could count towards your 15%. But I think Peter's right. A lot of times the 15% is met by the perimeter landscaping and the parking island landscaping.
Yeah, I agree that typically that 15% gets covered by the different types of landscaping.
Fair enough. So maybe if we,
But it's just making sure that people understand that the other types of landscaping can contribute to this 15%.
clarify some definitions. Maybe just figure it out. This isn't, move on. Just-
And related to the quantification aspect of this, Tina, I just looked at a couple projects in CAD, and it seems like, and this is just something to throw out there, if we wanted to quantify the vegetation put in these areas, a grass plus, like if it's one tree per 2,000 square feet or one tree per 1,500 square feet, that seems to meet what we've been doing on a couple different projects. So just to put that out there as an idea.
Oh, so you're talking about where the code says grass alone does not count as landscaping. Define what you'd have to put in there so it does count.
Yes, and because I think that's 15% hasn't come up with clients, but the quandary of what is the right amount that it's not grass.
Hold on. So inside this 4,000 square box. Or 8,000 square foot box.
I have some comments on that, especially regarding buffers and width of planting beds, stuff like that, but I kind of come in line with that. Because it doesn't make sense to me that you have, a 10-foot wide landscaping bed that isn't gonna get completely filled with plants. It makes more sense to confine them into smaller areas, or at least give the option, and then have nice manicured lawn around those areas. I think we had kind of hit on that a little bit last meeting.
And I think that falls underneath the perimeter landscaping section rather than the 15%.
Right, right, exactly, yes, but I'm saying that we need to figure out how we incorporate those lawn areas into your required landscaping area calculation, because you could have a tree and, X amount of shrubs every 30 feet or whatever you have to have, and still incorporate grass into those areas in order to reduce the size of your actual quote unquote landscaping bed that's full of rock mulch or bark mulch or whatever. And you can still do it in tasteful fashion that would look well and good.
Yeah, that's easy to do. That's not a problem, because it's just a matter of treating the perimeter landscaping separate from the interior. Because I think what Peter's referring to, or at least the one that I know that they worked on the project, was for Sudsy Salmon and Firehouse subs. So Firehouse had their perimeter landscaping, they had their landscape islands, but then they had these leftover areas that weren't parking, they weren't the building. They didn't want it as a concrete patio, so it was just grass. And so it was, how do you allow that grass to count toward your landscaping? And so what Peter was saying is to find how many trees or how many shrubs you have to put in based on a square footage to get it to count.
Yes.
And so that's easy. And the same with the perimeter, you would just call that out and say up to a maximum of X, so that somebody doesn't do all grass. And then, you just, by the types, you just then put the standards that you think are appropriate.
Versus interior. Perimeter. Oh,
Buffer.
True. So perimeter is, what's perimeter, what's buffer? I guess definitions.
Buffer is a use specific modification to either perimeter or parking, site perimeter or parking.
Did you understand him? Did you understand him?
Yes, listening.
Yes.
So basically, if you have a drive-through commercial next to residential, there are items that trigger a different level of landscape that is intended to separate two uses. But it's, and what I mean by use specific is it's based on the use of the particular business.
So what's buffer versus what's perimeter?
Buffer is a separation between two non-compatible uses,
Meaning,
residential
My
and
lot.
commercial.
okay, what about, what's the, between my lot and the road? Is that a buffer or is that a screen?
No, that's just called perimeter landscaping.
Okay, so.
Screening and buffering is used interchangeably.
Is that in the code?
Well,
Yeah.
it calls it that, but I'm just saying we use layman's term, like landscape islands isn't actually what's used in the code. It's called parking termination islands or something like that, but I call them landscape islands. Just, that makes more sense to me, but
The code says, screening / buffer. Screening. So that's where she's saying, those are equal
It's screening and buffering is,
based on use, whereas perimeter is any site has to have perimeter landscape. And it's just the exterior boundary.
even if it's parking lot versus neighbor's parking lot.
There's further ways to get into there.
Right, and that's why I'm kind of like, my parking lot feeds into his parking lot.
Yeah, if you have parking lot connections, there is,
Right, but
yeah,
how much nice do we have to put between the two?
right.
Okay.
Well, and there's
I was gonna see if I
Isn't
could
there
pull one up.
code, there's code portions that talk about requirements of perimeter landscaping with like uses, adjoining like uses. And so if you have commercial against commercial, there's something that talks about perimeter landscaping between.
No, there's nothing between commercial to commercial or commercial. There's industrial next to commercial.
So if I,
No, I'm not talking about screening. I'm just talking about perimeter landscaping in general.
So perimeter is only along the road front.
Okay.
Just think of it as road frontage landscaping.
Okay,
And we can change the name, but perimeter is your perimeter
So, yeah.
along the street front.
so you have right away, perimeter landscaping is your right away,
Yes,
basically,
yes.
frontage. But then you also have parking lot perimeter, which is around the edge of your parking lot.
Well, there's an addition. No, there's not parking lot perimeter. So there's, okay, this one's not a good one because it doesn't butt up to it, but this is site plan, this is PW out here. This is the building here, and this is the parking here. So perimeter landscaping is this on the lot right along PW, that's perimeter. Every one of these little landscape islands that you can't quite see here, they're called out throughout here. These are those parking termination road landscape islands, whatever you want to call them. And then, see, I was gonna try and find the landscape plan.
Yeah, Tina, if it's worth it as an exhibit, our first L sheet with our code review, that might help to visualize stuff for this.
Okay, let me go back. Here's then.
And if all else fails, I could pull it up here as well, I think.
I was looking for one for Marie and it just wasn't popping up. That's what I was looking for, but I'm. for whatever
Tina,
reason-
do you want me to try to re-email that to you?
Sure, if you got one handy, that'd be great.
Hey,
I'll
Maria,
just-
I've got it up right. I've got it up right in
Okay.
front of me, so I can send it.
Great.
I did take some photos for you guys of some landscaping in and around the area, different ideas. I know you guys are busy, so I thought, as I was out driving around, I was like, oh, okay, I'll snap some pictures.
I don't always take pictures when I'm driving, but I make notes in my head of things, and then I figure, well, I pull in here, but I got ideas. The reason you guys will talk to each other a lot, that's very apparent. I don't talk to you, and they don't talk to you, so you have this shared vocabulary. And one thing I know is the words matter, and that's what code's about, but having definitions that are clearly understood and clearly stated.
Yeah.
For somebody who picks it up and wants to know, okay, what is buffer and what's perimeter and what do these things mean? So they can paint a picture.
Well, and this could definitely be clarified with a graphic.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Can I say that,
and I think unfortunately it also goes back to the if for being an adjacent entity, if Anchorage code, the semantics, even having the alignment between the semantics, because the different landscapers and different people work in both jurisdictions, so it's something to consider.
I mean, it's definitely worth considering, but whoever gets clarified first gets to own it. Jesse, what you said.
yeah, so. I mean, I do development, and I, build commercial buildings sometimes and whatnot, but, I just say, I'd hire one of these guys if I was gonna build in the city, but I look at you guys' code and, before I even make a decision that I wanna do that and would retain one of these guys, I look at that and I say, this is gonna be a nightmare. And so I don't.
What about it says nightmare to you?
It looks ridiculously overcomplicated.
This diagram maybe.
Okay, I like hearing this because I just sucked it up and hired and I didn't understand.
I
it
mean,
all.
if I had to, but I have options, right? I don't necessarily have to be within city limits if I build
So-
like another commercial building, say.
What I just heard as a developer said, I avoid Wasilla because I can't understand.
Every builder I talked to, same exact thing, and he said it very politely to say to
Well, I know most builders use different words.
No, I'm just-
I've said them too.
And I speak for myself, I think both Marie and Peter and Andy said it all, same kind of thing, as we're hearing the same thing from developers, that's cheaper than outside of Wasilla.
or deny a very good job that we could be providing.
Right, 'cause I can't understand it.
I almost don't even care about a little bit of additional cost. It's just that I look at it and I think that the city's gonna hassle me endlessly over it. I mean,
So, yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of our clients, they don't like the unpredictability of it because they don't fully understand what they have to do, and it's complicated to explain it to them because there's so many if then this. So
You're trying to finance a project for X amount of dollars, you need to know.
right.
Yeah.
Marie, we haven't probably talked as much as we should, but I picked up a set that you set up for me and went, what? What? And Ray just said to me, tuck and roll, just tuck and roll. I'm like, I don't want to. So do it anyway, I got other things to do. So he was right. But there was
Yeah.
some, it's not your fault. It's just, when I looked at it, I thought, my landscaping's great. There won't be any problems at all. No.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty common on what I've seen from some of our clients is they just don't fully understand. So I think clarifying what's expected of people, especially up front, is going to make a huge difference because people get an expectation when they come in and do a project that they're going to, they have a budget in mind. This is what they want to do. This is their ultimate goal. And it's hard for them to understand if they don't have some sort of vision up front of this is what's going to be required of me by the city. And there's always going to be somebody who doesn't want to do anything, but from what I've seen, most of our clients want to do something. They want, they have a little bit of pride in their site, and that's what's great about having these small businesses is this is their calling card. And they realize that. But if they don't understand it and they go in with expectations and those expectations aren't clarified to them up front, that's where they get very frustrated. And that's when things kind of start to spiral. So just making it easy for people to understand, and even just the semantics that we've been talking about, it kind of brings a point that maybe the semantics need to be clarified and made it more simple for just the general owners to understand.
I'm starting.
And for what it's worth, for jurisdictional similarities, it's a little bit of a smaller project, but I dumped a code sheet from Anchorage in there, and you can see the difference in the code sheet for developing in Anchorage.
Is this, when you said code sheet,
So
walk us through it.
I dumped it. So I dumped one into the chat, Tina. I don't know if you click on that, you can probably bring it up.
Yeah, sure I can. Okay, we'll try.
I think a diagram just like this in the code though, you have to go one way. Just defining what areas are what.
And from your Teams window, you should be able to pull it up with the chat icon, I think, Tina.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
It should actually be in your window where you're sharing your screen.
Yeah, I have your plan up right now, so that would be. Click on yours.
There you
Okay,
go,
there
now
we
to
go.
the chat. There you go.
And
There.
here, I
Yeah.
guess.
And it's a comparison of complexity between two jurisdictions. So this is a typical code sheet for Anchorage. So you can see the visual complexity between the two different jurisdictions.
Okay, what are we looking at here? You say comparisons.
Well, so
Walk us
look at all.
through who's who.
This is Anchorage, so just look at the hatches, look at all the different line items and things versus the code complexity for Wasilla.
Just the information on the sheet is all.
Yeah,
Oh.
he's just talking about the tables.
I'm talking about the volume of material they're trying to understand.
Yeah.
Okay, because I see about 20 something different reference code numbers.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
So what the table's showing you is what the code requires and then how it complies, how it meets it or exceeds it, or it can't be less than, they wouldn't show it that way, but that's Anchorage. That's the first time I've seen one of those, so this will be helpful, Peter, so thanks.
Well, and Tina, this isn't quite fair because in Anchorage, if you're less than 40 parking spaces, you don't have to have parking interior landscaping. So that parking interior landscaping is a big difference as well for how it's quantified.
Okay.
Agreed.
But yeah, if you have, like I said, if you have any, do have the interior, that would be helpful, because, yeah, any way to streamline it, definitely.
If you're busting up a parking lot that has fewer than 40 parking spots, you're making plowing a nightmare.
That's the issue. It's
You just made it expensive. Plow guys, should
And
be-
not practical.
they're busting up equipment, they're hitting things.
So I have to,
A lot of destruction too.
I have to ask Tina, Matsu Regional's outpatient surgery, outpatient center up on Bogart Road.
Yeah.
Been around for years,
Across the street from me, yeah.
across the street from you, landscaped. There's no perimeter, there's no little peninsula sticking out there. That was specifically, was one of my projects years ago, so I worked with Bert Lett on that one. Specifically designed so that it was easy to plow snow in the wintertime. And that's what I'm kind of wondering is what's the feeling on a site like that, where they have large landscape islands in the middle of the parking area, but there's
Or
no,
else they can just plow
they
like
can
crazy.
plow like crazy. That's kind of what I'm,
They're the linear ones between the rows of parking.
no, they actually have out in the middle. They have out in the middle, they just have a big island like this and you park like this, you
Yeah.
park like that,
Do
you park
that.
like that.
Let's see.
Right over there.
I was just driving by
The
that
upper
the
one.
other day and kind of reminding
So
myself.
like this triangle.
Yes.
Oh, but they do have the linear ones.
Right, but all they have to
Yeah.
do to plow, you
Right.
get here and go,
Right.
and they're
Yeah.
done, they're done, they're not
I had that
hitting
in my
anything.
notes
If
from
you
last
see the
time.
upper right
Yeah.
corner, that's a plow pile right there.
Yeah,
right
there,
That's
yeah.
snow storage.
Yeah, no, I have that in my notes. You
So
guys
my
briefly
question-
talked about that.
My
No.
question is that something that is a standard that you'd like to go to as opposed to every 10 spaces?
As a business owner?
With
Oh, yeah.
peninsula out.
But you could also do it, you could do it, I think you should leave the option open to have it like that, or you do,
Right, but you get your amount of island and parking landscaping that
Right.
way, as
Right.
opposed to doing it with every 10 parking spaces.
Oh,
you stick
man.
a
but you
peninsula out.
but you can also line those up and plow straight through that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
all
Well,
kinds is
what
that.
can you? Because if you go back to,
Yeah, I guess if you don't have,
if you do one of these guys where you got,
we go to the Sun Mountain.
Well, no, can I?
It's got an island that looks like
Let's
this.
go over to Canes and that whole cluster.
Okay.
But you don't have to have the landscape between, you
You
have
don't.
it, no,
That's a plow nightmare.
yeah,
Who wants to plow that crap?
right,
You gotta scoop out each one of those and you can't, there's no easy single pass.
right.
I have trouble parking my truck in there.
I can't stand that.
I got a dually.
I think they were permitted, okay, so part
Well-
of why they're the way they are is I think they were under the 30% code. They weren't meeting 15%. See, the code
That doesn't
used to
surprise me.
require you to have 30% of your lot in vegetation. Then it was changed and yeah, see, everybody thinks, so what? Yeah, for 20 years, it was 30% and you weren't supposed to clear it first. You were supposed to keep it and work around it. So
Yeah.
when it was changed in 17,
Yeah,
the commission at the time said they heard too much feedback and it's valid feedback that it's much easier to clear the lot, grade it, level it, get it to where you want it, and then go plant back your
oh,
landscaping.
by far.
And so
Otherwise
what
you
they,
got puddles.
at that time, they said, and the comp plan wants to beautify the city, so we will enhance the requirements along the perimeter and have some landscape islands to break up these sealed parking lots. But in exchange, that will give you 15% of your use of your lot back. So I think they're under the 30% is why they were dropping these everywhere to meet the 30%.
Yikes.
So today's
get
code,
any-
they probably wouldn't have had to had those.
Did they get any? Okay,
They
so,
got credit
you
for
have a
all of
question?
this. but-
okay, they did, okay.
Yeah.
What's your question?
My question is, if, in my case, like, let's say if there is we got 15% right here, right? Why do we have to have this additional complication that is just not practical, not cost effective? People damage their cars and things like that, plowing nightmare and things like that. If we can satisfy this, why is this still enforced? If we still meet the
So
50?
first, I can answer some of this. One, this is a really bad example, because that's lake frontage.
Assume that's a different adjusting
Here, we'll
lot.
cut the lake off. So
Because if you're a builder and there's no lake frontage there, is there any way you're leaving that much grass in the back of it?
Or,
My example is even more
So
simple.
we have 70%. Oh, if you're not, you have to lay in front of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you know.
because the idea is that we don't want to end up with a parking lot like Fred Meyer has, where it's just a big open CUS.
Yeah, or even this one right next to it is that Pets Inn.
Target where it's just
Yeah,
a big
that's
open
a-
sea.
oops, sorry.
Yeah. So
I mean,
I like Matsu, the
understand the
the
concern.
outpatient center one's not bad.
Yeah.
So, good question. Bad one to talk about. Only because you have the complexity of the lake there.
And it's a,
Part of it, there is there's the buffer between the street they want some break between the street and so that front there.
It's a visual.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not even like their landscape beds at
No.
all. But
The street buffer is pretty reasonable, but
yeah, but I just, the way that thing's laid out, just, I don't understand it.
Yeah, this one would have, it only required, so Canes came in, I don't know what their square foot, they're under the same lot, which makes this one really weird. It's a bad example in many ways. But
But
yeah, they came in when there wasn't a landscape island on each end, but theoretically you could have designed this to where,
so that's
yeah,
one of my
you would have all
questions.
these.
That's one of my questions
You
going
mean
back to,
Okay.
Sioux Regional.
Oh,
Landscape islands at the end of the parking lot.
yeah, Target has that too.
Why do we need those? That's
You
what
mean pop
makes it-
out ones, the one making.
That's what makes it difficult to plow and maintain. This, I mean, even that one, yeah, like these guys here, if we can get the required landscaping in, maybe even a slightly wider area so that you get the density that you're looking for.
These actually give you a safety aspect. So maybe this one isn't the one. Let's see. Someone was telling me about it and actually I hadn't thought about
There's
it.
a couple of big bowls, right? You're talking about the safety thing, but that's on the, right by the.
No, I'm talking
entrance.
about the islands on the end cap. So let's see, where's the,
These ones were. the
so
Safety thing.
we'll assume that this one's not drawn out that way. Well, okay, I'm at this, I'm a car, I'm coming across here, I'm pulling up here. I need to see if there's a car coming this way or this way.
Right.
If there's a parking space right on the end without that end cap, one, your car's hanging out there unprotected. Two,
Right.
I can't see through your big Suburban that's sitting there on the corner to see if I have a line of sight to go.
Okay, but we're talking about this one right here, not this one.
Yes,
But
well, both of them,
and it also
And this
gives you
one.
an end to where your parking is, so you don't have people parking across your.
yes,
Yeah,
into
no,
your drive.
So if you were to go to like,
Actually, it's also kind of a fire code, as far as getting your. It helps helps keeping
It keeps
that
the-
vehicle,
the
that's not
TV
so much.
yeah,
about
well,
wide.
that-
radiuses and stuff like that.
And it,
But if you look at this, you can still plow that. There's a continuous run of, what is that, 50
That's just-
spots,
yeah,
80
that-
spots?
Yeah.
With just sidewalk right down them.
Right. But if you go back to the one at Matthew Regional, we'll call it that one for,
You don't have those.
you actually have landscaping that is perpendicular to the parking spots
Right.
that makes things plowable. I think they could do a
Yeah.
better job of maintaining the stuff in front of the building.
And people are, thing is too, I mean, you're gonna park here, but now that this island's ended, you're not gonna be parking out in here, and those can be held back far enough if you're worried about sightlines and things like that. I mean, that's wide enough to maintain that.
it could be.
I'm going to chip in as well. So an unfortunate
Please.
part of this is site due diligence. Some people put the building in the wrong parking lot on a site, like Raising Cane. It's a wonky leftover site that was redeveloped.
Yep.
Then when it comes to end caps and visuals, Tina, something that should be required on your plans is site distance triangles. And then having within code that allows you to reduce planting within site distance triangles. So everything that we're talking about that has an impact for safety has a way to deal with it within code. It adds a little bit more to it for requiring site distance triangles, but it upgrades public safety.
Yeah, and that's transition. When you talk about site distance triangles, you're talking about inside of a parking lot or outside?
Outside of a parking, so the two things for this is outside of a parking lot. So there's standard site triangles based on the road speed in order to give clear distance zones.
Yeah.
And then
Off the
within a
back.
parking lot, Tim is spot on. Is that for getting your fire circulation, you have to illustrate to the fire marshal that you can get around the parking lot.
But when I'm talking about, I look at that parking lot, that's an easy plow job for such a big thing. But we have-
Definitely for the eastern portion, yes.
Yeah, well,
But most of it, yeah.
Now, Peter, how wide do these have to be to support trees in a reasonable way? I mean, I've read different things, but this is your
So-
bailiwick.
Within Anchorage code, and I think your code too, there's a minimum, Anchorage code is a minimum width of 8 feet if it's going to count toward landscape code requirements. If it was a not code bed, You could get away with 4 or 5 feet, but wider is better.
But what area would it have to be?
We're talking about biology, not code.
Yes,
Yeah. So I think I mentioned before, for a mature 10-inch caliper tree, you want about 600 cubic feet of soil. So if we say our soil is let's say they put in 2 feet deep and it's 5 feet wide, it should be 60 feet long to support one tree. So 5 by 60 by 2 foot deep would support one tree.
see, that's the part, it is biology, but it's also related to, you have to then define how wide these have to be, because to have the trees in them, there's no need saying you can put a 2-foot strip and drop a tree in, one's gonna die next year.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand.
And another thing is that for tree selection, I know that the current code, and I don't agree with this, is the current code eliminates columnar trees. If you have a 5-foot wide bed and you put columnar trees in, that's a fantastic thing to put into narrow beds.
Cool.
And with our low sun angles, it still does provide some summer shading, depending on how the rows are oriented.
So let me ask you this. So we're looking at this parking lot, and parking lot design is a little bit of landscape. Sure. So
Parking lot design is my favorite.
all right, so let's go across the street to a parking lot I know well.
This one, right?
Yeah, the next door. So on mine, I've got 2. I would prefer to have left, I don't know. Trying to remember real quick. I've got 1 in that line right down the middle, and I've got another one to the other end. So it's not too bad.
And when you speak of one, are you talking about
I'm
trees?
talking about
and-
the
Termination.
terminations. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a word. But I feel like sometimes they're too frequent.
And
You know, every 10 spaces is gross.
It's every
And-
15 unless you have over a certain number, and then it's every 12. But that can be changed. I mean, that's certainly something you can look at.
Anchorage doesn't require intermediate islands. So in Anchorage, what we normally do is I do like islands next to entries or where you'd want to define your drive aisles. That's the best place for it from defining traffic. And then other than that, typically what we try and do is we try to mass islands together. So if we have let's say you have a 40 or 50 foot long row of double parked cars, we would put an island at each end and then maybe a big island in the center. Or depending on snow clearing, we might just do a big island at one end that everything gets pushed one direction. But the nice thing is consolidating islands because it's better for mature trees.
I like it. Because I feel like sometimes things get more chopped up and they lose the value of trying to kick things off, especially in Alaska.
So yeah, so we went with Sun Mountain, went the opposite direction, rather doing perpendicular to the parking lot. We did a termination every 10 spaces, but then lined them up across the parking lot, particularly for Sun Mountain there.
Looks real good.
Over to the right.
I was being facetious.
Oh, you're
No,
talking
no,
about-
yeah, it gets worse.
Yeah.
But see, all those landscape islands are all lined up, so you can make,
Yeah, you can
when that gets paved out.
Okay, can you zoom in a little bit more?
in or out.
In.
Oh, in.
Let's fill the screen there a little bit. Okay, cool.
We had some great issues. We had to do some other additional stuff too, but
So you're talking about this line right here.
yeah, so we don't have that, interior, that landscaping in the middle there, so you can't push
You
through.
can push it that way.
It'll
Or
be ideal when that thing is paved out, but.
Yeah.
You know,
You have an obvious snow movement that works with the intermediate planting beds.
so it works, I guess what I'm saying is we should leave the option open, either way, because it works either way.
Yeah.
Kind of how your site design works out.
Each site is different too, so
Yeah.
especially on a smaller one.
Well, having too rigid of a requirement.
I realize you probably have some grade issues right here, which is why this is
Yeah.
going this way. Are these necessary then? Or can that be?
Yeah,
So per the code, you have to have one and
Yeah, that's what I,
determination of,
yeah, so that's what my question is, are these really necessary? So if you were to get rid of those, I mean, you may have some width here so you can deal with your grade right there.
right,
But as far as snow plowing goes, you can still just continue on.
right,
This I see is important because this is your site triangle right here that you're trying
Yeah.
to establish as you pull out into this road.
So maybe it depends on where they are.
Whether you have to have a termination at the end
Right.
of each thing. I mean, this,
Yeah, so-
technically, these are terminations,
Yep.
even though they're shown as an island. Are you required to have a termination if you have, say, something like
Right, yeah, right now you are, but I think it's a great idea to give that as an option.
And then another thing that we got, so there's a couple of, I think they're a little conflicting, makes it a little bit difficult, but you're required to have your, not termination, but interior, middle landscape island to split up your parking, 1 per 15 or 1 per 12, excuse me. But then you're also required to have a tree every 100 feet. So to get around that, for this one, we have a landscape island every 10 spots lengthwise.
So maybe that needs changed.
Yeah, so that way we meet the 100 foot, every 100 feet we have a tree, because there's a tree in every one of those islands. But it's, in addition, it's additional to the one island per 10 or 12 or 15, or sorry, 12 or 15 parking spots. So there's two separate code spots that talk to that.
just, I mean, looking at this,
Yeah, that's newer, so I'm sure
correct.
there's a better solution.
Yeah,
So you did this one here.
yeah, I did the civil.
Okay, let's look at, some other stuff over.
Well, Red Robin's
No,
Sports, newer than that?
no, go back to the right.
Oops, the other way.
No,
The rest of it.
Oh, the rest of it, okay.
Say, look at this, I see plowing nightmare.
oh, yeah. I'm not saying that the whole site is a good example.
Right, but I look at
But you
this,
can push this
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
you
push.
just- you can
That's
push it.
not-
still plowing nightmare.
It's,
Once you, this, what is it, third lot, second lot, third lot, body in motion tends to stay in motion. The less you have to change direction in a plow truck, the better. Once that snow is in motion, it tends to stay, still got that friction coefficient.
Well, in plowing, you could say that you can plow this way, but in real life, it's a lot difficult because you have to,
Line it up,
but
yeah, especially if you only have one or two sites where you.
Yeah, there's no storage.
And then,
But you couldn't have met your parking requirements if you'd have used those linear landscape
no.
islands. You would have lost way too many parking spaces.
Yeah, we
Understood.
all the, like we'd have to have 10 feet between that in that middle there, and we'd lose, the buildings have to get further apart, so. that-
how do you? If there was no rules except you needed something that looked good, quote unquote. How do you look at a site and say that looks good? And then write the rules to match it? Because I think sometimes the cart gets before the horse.
Yeah.
When there are obvious hard rules, side triangles, duh. Grading, duh, but that's, having, can you get
Well,
through?
and that's where I think Peter and Marie and my disciplines kind of work together in that they come up with how it looks good. I come up with, well, this is what we gotta do to make this grade work here, or we gotta get this turn radius in here,
Right, but I heard a saying long ago, good law gets discovered, not written. When you're battling against physics, you're gonna lose. Because drainage is what it is, but when you have arbitrary, you have to have this because we think you do. I always like to say, why?
Well, my experience, if a project is not maintainable, it will not look good.
Agreed.
And I have seen the best plans, but if they're not easy to build or they're not practical to build and they're not maintainable, they don't ever work out. So I think there needs to be a combination of aesthetics and practical design to go into these designs for them to be successful. You can't have just one or the other.
Yes. Love it. The maintainability as well as the flexibility to make it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Can you plow it? Can you water it? Can you get to the things? You know, all the goods.
Right. And that helps when you're working with grading and when you're trying to do detention. And I mean, it just having some flexibility plays into the whole site design and making it function properly.
And on the same note, make it understandable so the contractor in the corner can pick it up and go, I think I can make that work.
Right.
Or I don't want to touch this thing.
Which
Because really
is,
what
which is where the buildability, you know, being able to build it, put it together, that's where that comes in.
So a question for this development is this condo lot lines or platted lot
Yes.
lines?
Condo lot lines.
So for the condo lot line one we were doing with Firehouse and Sudsy Sam and all that kind of thing, we took the opinion that each of the individual condo sites would have its own 15% of the greater development in order to deal with snow storage. These parcels don't look like that they have 15% apportioned to the condo parcel. Is that correct?
That's correct. They do not.
Okay, so Tina, I think that's something to red flag is that if the 15% isn't apportioned to the parcels, it really makes snow removal difficult. Are you guys trucking snow off? Are you guys trucking snow off site?
There's a huge retention basin to the north that they put it in.
So the development decision was that they have the painful task of moving their snow on the ground a long distance to get to their snow dump.
They use a loader. Yeah, they're using a loader or a couple of loaders to move.
How do they feel about that? Do they have any regrets?
I don't, in particular over there, Unit E, D, and F, that's pretty, I think that's a headache for them, especially with Sonic when it was going pretty heavy.
Yeah.
They were having some trouble with it. But they are, they do, in particular, like with Planet Fitness, they are plowing it kind of in that undeveloped area in the middle. They'll probably continue to do that when it does get paved out and as a parking lot, in some of the areas where they got more room, they can stack some material or stack some snow until they want to move it out to the north there.
And it is tangential, Tina, but part of this is that we try to protect our clients or developers, but often we're involved too late in the process to have meaningful change for it. So because condo lot lines have happened at least twice within the city of Wasilla, that might actually be something that should be considered within code, that a development, a big development maybe just can't put their 15% off in the corner because it really will impact snow. That's completely tangential. Sorry, guys.
That's what it is.
That's right. And I think, you could require 15% of each condo lot line, but it also goes into how the developer wants to maintain the site,
Yeah.
If they want to take up some of their parking to have short-term storage or storage of snow,
Yeah, it's maintenance versus maintenance burden versus maintenance ease versus development return on investment.
Because again, you would have lost tons of square footage of commercials if you'd have put the 15% on every single one.
Right.
You couldn't have made this happen.
Right.
I mean,
and the big point of having snow storage area is that it's not ending up in the right of way or, in general anyway. Or that, at least you're maintaining your fire access and all that kind of stuff, of course.
Yeah.
But
I think it's an interesting case study between this parcel and then the steam house, the steam commons.
Right. And that is, and another thing too that is very common for a site is we do have a storm drain network in this whole thing too.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so the whole site drains up to the north and that there's a hole right there at the north property boundary.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's just right on top of the screen.
That dark,
Yeah,
that dark area.
that's probably about 20 feet deep, 20, 30 feet deep. And I mean, that's basically where it's all going. Yeah, it's just a basin. It'll hold I think the 10-year, 24-hour event for the whole site without taking into account the percolation. So, I mean, it's a huge hole there. And again, it's kind of, unique animal in that it has a storm drain system that takes it up there. I mean, not saying that nobody else does. I'm just saying not a lot do.
Oh, what's unique?
But probably because it's a unified development is why it has a
Right.
storm drain system, whereas Steam Commons, each individual condo unit was
Right.
sold off to an individual
Right.
developer who now,
Wants to-
yeah, it wasn't master plan, this was master plan.
Yeah, and
So
then
that's
yeah.
just choices for a condo plat, but that's why it went that other way.
They
And I
lease
was-
out.
Gonna say that having a master plan for something like that would have probably saved a lot of headache.
For Steam Commons, yes, but they chose not to. They didn't want to. So, I mean,
Right.
you can't force, I mean, you can
Well-
force a developer, but we didn't want to force a developer to choose which way to develop and sell off their property.
And this was somewhat master plan, but it's not, I mean,
It-
it's evolved several times.
It has to be flexible based on,
Well, and a master plan in general is conceptual, but at least you've got an idea of, okay, this is how we're gonna deal with drainage. And then that way it's not up in the air. And then at the end they go, oh, we don't have a pond. What are we gonna do with all this drainage?
Yeah.
It's known up front. And so when a builder
Yeah.
comes in, they know either they have to deal with all their drainage on site,
Yeah.
or they have this pond reserve that they can push their water to.
Yeah, as far as utilities goes, there is definitely a master plan in that.
So we went from
Utilities
one end of the
purposes.
spectrum to the other. Cool. I mean that genuinely.
so from a meeting check point of view, I know I think we were intended for an hour and a half. Is there anything we need to wrap up or what was our time? Were we supposed to?
We don't.
30.
Yeah.
It's your typical, but it's up to you, the committee.
So me, I look at it and go, okay, we really need to make this understandable for the average professional who's not in the industry. Can you put it in front of a reasonably intelligent builder and have them go, yeah, I understand it well enough to make a decision, because that's what they're doing, and hand it off to those that want to get into the minutia. Because, my experience, I didn't understand it, and I got surprised, and nobody likes surprises in building, because they're usually expensive. To write it in a way that it achieves certain real goals and not so finite as, every time parking spots, you're gonna white one out for a planting bed. How do we write that? That's the holy grail in my mind. So
Yeah.
he understands that you guys can use it, that we get clear answers out of the planning department.
See, I think going back to what Tim said is gonna be the only way you're gonna be able to achieve that is if you go with those tiers of approval based on the size. Because a small site, okay, I'll tell you 85 to 95% of small businesses are not building a new building in Wasilla. They are occupied, they're a tenant in an existing building. So they're the very small number. Most of them are larger projects.
Right.
These are chain restaurants. These are, companies that hire professionals. So if you go with a small project, then that needs to be real clear for the one that may be planning it themselves and they're not hiring all these professionals. And then you have the medium size and the large size that are of such a scale. It's kind of like saying a property owner should understand the building code and what the plumbing requirements are and electrical. No, you hire someone who's an expert in that.
And that's the large ones.
Yeah.
The medium projects is the guys that grew up in this town and are avoiding it because they don't understand it. My mind, I wouldn't be doing the project I'm doing unless I was already where I was at.
Well, and I wonder if we would have more smaller businesses if they could, because I know we've had a couple people approach us and, you know, they couldn't understand the code. And then when we gave them a rough estimate on how much it was going to cost, they just flat out said they couldn't afford it because they're a small business.
I think the price of real estate probably pushes a lot of small business owners into a strip mall until they've established themselves and they grow and then they branch out. But yeah, no, I mean, it's not easy for a small business owner. It wasn't ever, codes aren't written typically for the average Joe when you're dealing with commercial, but it doesn't mean they can't be. It just means that's not been the norm. So we can create whatever norm we want.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I might go, I like simplicity, but you have to see complexity before you can get to it. So again, going back to the main things that we've heard from people, if we were to get rid of one thing that would make many people happy, it would be getting rid of perennials so they don't add significant cost.
Amen,
The
brother.
second thing we'd get rid of would be make all shrubs 18 inches. That would eliminate significant cost. You know, 6-foot evergreen trees, 2-inch caliper, which it has. So consistency within the code. So there are things that we can do immediately that if we left the room after we did that, 75% of our clients would be happy.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Is there anything else in your mind that is low-hanging fruit that you can spit out in this meeting so that we can type it up and pass it around?
Oh, sure. So I can do it off the top of my head. 18-inch shrubs, 6-foot tall evergreen trees, 2-inch caliper deciduous trees measured 6 inches above the ground. Removing perennials, except that I think that the code would benefit by having them at key entrances and maybe a certain distance apart, because I think that they can be nice. Then allowing rock mulch within ornamental beds, allowing lawns to be used as part of the surface treatment within required planting beds. And then, looking at the 10-foot width for landscape beds, I think a minimum average of 8 would be sufficient and nice. And then extending beyond that, there are some of the things that relate to the new code improvements where it had evergreen shrubs required for 50% or 30% and 50% of the parking lot perimeter hedge. That gets to the second tier of things that are just adding complexity.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Very simple at first, and then once he shifted to the second portion, I was lost.
Part of the reason we did that, this is a public meeting. If he doesn't spill it all out and we just puke it on paper, then we can't pass it around. So that's where like, just spit all your ideas out, because then she can type them up and we don't look at them. And then now they're sitting in here.
So Peter, go through the trees again for me, the height. You
So,
went too fast, I lost you.
You want to get rid of the,
6-foot minimum height for evergreens, and I like what's in the code about how that's measured. I think that's good. 2-inch caliper for deciduous trees, and I can't remember what code says, but for 2-inch caliper, it's measured 6 inches above the root crown. So
does that work?
Yeah, that's typically a good assessment for most trees because that gets above the root flare.
hey, Peter, you're saying 2-inch caliper and get rid of the height requirement. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, because as long as your code references the American nurseryman standards, because what the nurseryman standard says that a 2-inch caliper tree is a minimum of like 10 or 12 feet tall. So by saying 10 feet, it's redundant to the standard which is used.
Yep.
Okay, so keeping it 2-inch caliper, just getting rid of the height designation.
And then I think
evergreen.
Yep, and I think that the new code does reference the ANSI Z90 standard, whatever, 90.1.
You said something earlier about columnar trees.
I think and this is the thing within a code is cottonwood should be excluded because it creates issues.
No, that's all. We put them back in.
Okay, so
No, the cottonwoods are back in. They were prohibited. Now they're back in.
Well, no. So, well, we can talk about that later, but the columnar ornamental species such as columnar birch and columnar aspen should be allowed. I don't see a reason for excluding those.
Okay, I'll bring you like 12 inches of why you should have shade trees in your parking lot, but okay, go ahead. I'll write the note down, but it's to create a tree canopy in that parking lot.
Understood.
So
Yeah,
a columnar
and-
does not create a
I
canopy.
I got two places I could use a columnar tree.
Well, there are some places that it makes sense,
Right.
and there are other
It's
places
prohibited in
that,
the code, I think.
Well,
it's-
and that's one of the reasons why you have professionals that are doing these plans, because we understand where they're appropriate and, you know, where a shade tree can fit.
Right,
So
I just say we should
So
give you the tool back.
excluding them wholly just basically ties our hands for a lot of situations where they're appropriate and you may not be able to have a tree.
So maybe
And
we,
it is a good follow-up discussion as well, because shade trees, their pros and cons to them is because of our climate, the earlier we get sunshine, direct sunshine onto our paved surfaces to melt off glare ice. So shade is good in the summer, especially with our climate getting hotter. But in the shoulder seasons, direct sunshine is a very good thing to have.
Amen, but saves me a lot of parking lot hassle.
And obviously the leaves aren't out, you know, that kind of thing, but the canopy does provide some shade. But so Tina, I completely hear what you're saying. I think it's a good follow-up discussion, because I concur that there are benefits. And then I think beyond those very quantitative items that affect price directly, or maintenance like the rock mulch, anything beyond that then starts to make the code easier to understand, easier to apply, and remove some of the interpretation. So I think that's the next step. But I know that with our clients, the cost item, and we guide them through the rest of it. So once we deal with cost related aspects and we get to simplifying the code, it'll start to make it that we don't have to handhold our clients through the code.
Okay. So,
And just to kind of build on what Peter said, I've talked to a couple of the nurseries around here and they can't find some of the tree sizes that we have in our code.
I can't get half my material right now, so.
Yep.
Right.
And part of that is a weird pandemic procurement. Everybody has codes like this now, that there's a weird industry thing. But typically in Alaska, 18-inch and 2-inch and 6-foot evergreens is what people prepare to do.
And that's nationwide. I mean, that's pretty standard all over the country. So.
Cool. Anything else we need to spell out so we can write it up and pass it around?
I think the next step, so if we're talking about quantitative changes, the next step beyond those would probably just be going through and looking at the densities of trees, where they go, the widths of the landscape beds. So I think that's the next step for the quantification. And then I think talking about buffer, those kind of items will be good.
So my hope, since we're puking out wish lists, my hope is clear definitions of words, charts that humans can understand, clarity and simplification. Make it easy for me to say. You know, if we can explain it to a 7th grader, then we're gonna be all right. And I understand that you can't write all code that way. I mean, electrical code is electrical code. I mean, I get the gist of it, but you guys are the masters of your craft. But I still understand 110, 220. I understand enough of it to communicate, so I know when I'm out of my zone. But
or you could go to a contractor, they'll be able to say, okay, this is
like
X amount of dollars to get.
yeah, and you have to do this because the code, and here's the code. Yeah. So to make it a little more utilitarian and easier to estimate for the average professional. That's my wish list. Anything else you'd add?
I have a specific,
Example.
a specific example that I'm dealing with and being threatened by, but
Sure.
I don't know if that's a pro plan, but I would love to hear your opinion.
Sure.
Once you complete your notes.
So. Do we else have any wish lists?
Maybe clarify the bond. That seems to be a big issue that I've come across with our clients. They're having a really hard time with the bond. So whether it's clarified or I think
Well,
we need
what-
to do something with the bond.
What are we bonding for even? I
It's
mean,
the guarantee.
completion or is it maintenance?
Right.
Or, you know, what are we guaranteeing? Just that you got it done and ran out or it's done right?
That's on you broke that out last time was
Yeah.
deciding whether it should be upon completion or maintenance or a combination of both.
And are we bonding to make sure that they install it correctly?
That's why it's
maintainable? Yeah, because installed correctly, okay, I counted them all out, or is it installed correctly below the dirt?
I can tell you, I don't have any druthers about what the answer is, but the code as it's written today is counting what's on the surface
Right, which I think is a
without
mistake,
inspecting what's under the ground.
or somebody verify that they did it right.
Right, and the conversation last time went toward having the landscape architect go out and inspect it, make sure the soils are right, that they're the depths that they're supposed to be, that it was followed
I
through.
don't think
And
it should be limited to that, but yeah,
well, staff can't do it. We'd have
Right.
to hire a contractor to do it for us and then
well, I
build.
think there may be other contractors, because I don't know that a lot of our landscape architects are gonna leave the thing they're working on at home at 6 o'clock at night. But there may be other arborists and things like that can verify. To limit it to one species of professional is a mistake.
And I think, Tina, this does bear further discussion because the objection to that the ASLA had was that we don't have the hammer with the client. So they barely, in Wasilla, they barely ask us to inspect in the first place. We would love to inspect, but there's really no, an inspection before you guys see it, there has to be a hammer associated with it somehow, or a carrot.
So it could be written in code that it's mandatory. That gives you the hammer, but is that the right
Well,
direction?
No, because there's still a conflict of interest for us is because we're being paid by them.
Oh,
Yeah, you can specify
So
that.
it's a follow-up discussion because it's almost like there needs to be a third-party inspection to keep all the relationships okay.
Mhm.
that's what Tim just said quietly, so it's funny you said that.
Nice work, Tim.
To go back to the maintainability is, do you have a maintenance plan? That's
Yeah.
one thing we would toss about.
And I think that like we said last time, I think submittal of a maintenance plan should be mandatory.
Because if you can't get water to your plantings, you won't have plantings.
And for those people in the room as well that are participating, one of the main discussions we had last time related to the fact these landscapes get installed, but sometimes owners don't know what they're getting or they don't have something in place to maintain them. So the current code has extra planting kind of to make up for the fact they might not be maintained. Whereas if they were properly maintained, maybe a carrot could be a reduction in the planting if they put in an irrigation system or if they have a maintenance contract or something. And that's what I'm looking forward to talking about for quantification is how do we build in carrots because we want plants to survive.
Mhm.
And with that, I think I might be called for a dinner pretty soon. So
Well,
no, the dinner arrived, so I can stay here.
so in other words, your food's getting cold, you gotta go.
Oh no, now I can just put myself on mute so to avoid the chewing noises.
Oh, no. I think I have one as well. We actually have. But anything left that should we discuss as committee as a whole?
Well, do you wanna, so next time I'm gonna take all these quantifiable ones, put it in a format we'll try and take a stab at a matrix type chart so that you guys can have that understanding and see if that works, if that's what you're talking about. But what do you want to talk about next time?
So I would love it if, and everybody else contribute, however, I would love it if you could take everything we've kind of puked out and then either group it up by type or by contributor. I think probably easier by type. So that we can then start to address issues, because I think some of them overlap. And then it would make it a little more manageable, and it would kind of help tell some of the story we're trying to pass up the stream to the people that have to sign off on this. Because everybody has their spot on the elephant they're grabbing at. Yeah.
Okay, I think the last meeting notes kind of grouped it. You guys-
Good there, I like that.
So, but it was very 30,000 foot level.
Yeah, but
meaning,
now we're
talking about
more
maintenance. Now you're
15,000
drilling
feet.
down. So, okay, I'll kind of work from that, what we said tonight, and then create those
Or,
talking points.
yeah,
specific-
talking
yeah,
points, you know, anywhere we can.
For focus. So we
Yeah.
can drill in.
Yep. We've talked in generalities. We got a little more specific today. The hard part is gonna get right down into writing words on code. And that's where I feel a lot of folks are gonna decide if they've wasted their time or if we came out with something useful. And I'm not a fan of wasting my time, so, you know, to get to it, and that's where the struggle, I'm gonna imagine that some of the struggle is gonna come down with semantics, because he's got a way he speaks and you got a way you speak, and the same over here. And I've listened to enough of it and go,
One thing I would like to put out as a goal is that it's not read the way the Anchorage out of 21 reads.
But it's not.
There are, and when I've gone through that thing, 60 to 70% of that is gobbledygook, and the rest of it is the actual
let's not get paid.
nuts and bolts.
Yes.
So clarity and simplicity.
Yeah.
I need to add, Marie mentioned, which I
Also
think.
to remember, does it apply inside that line over there? Because that's what we're talking about.
And then the diagrams or examples. So Peter, you and Marie have any that you've seen that you think are good? I'm trying to put it all on you, but I'm just saying, if there's something, not the matrix, I got that, that's Anchorage. I don't think Anchorage maybe even has maybe as many drawings. Marie was talking about identifying where perimeter is, where the interior is.
That's part of the definition.
Oh,
So,
no, in a diagram.
yes, exactly. But
Mhm.
so since those diagrams were submitted on Teams, can we pop those into our notes and share them? I mean, you submitted them, I guess it's public record now. You got any problem with that?
I should check with a client on it or otherwise, so that would just be requested for that.
Okay, so since it's already there, somebody has to go digging, but before we reprint it, if you can send the same thing over, even if it's redacted,
Sure.
if the client's cool. I mean, if you got something that's worth sharing, I just am trying to not get sideways with Public Meetings Act as well. But if you've got something hiding somewhere that's in a textbook or I don't know, a journal, that's your world.
And so, and speaking to the complexity of the code, so Anchorage code was supposed to have an accompanying book with all these diagrams, but they decided it was a big pain in the butt to do that. My feeling is that a couple of small exhibits that are a more generic version of Firehouse or otherwise, those could be quite useful. But I think that with what we're talking about with the code, we can simplify things even further, that those exhibits become really straightforward.
Mhm.
More pictures, the better.
Mhm.
And I don't think, and that's the challenge with pictures of good conditions. I don't think there are any great ones because they should illustrate the quantification that's similar to what Wasilla wants. So it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg, I think.
Sure. That's the beauty of it. It's challenging. So, yeah, I mean, if anybody has anything they can share, please do. Otherwise, this is the way I draw.
Mhm. Well, we can get some, I mean, for examples, we can get some of our plans. They may not be the best example, but you can at least poke holes in them and say, like this, don't like this, don't like this. And we
Or-
can cut
or
off
even-
the.
Yeah, and to
we can
look
just
at it and
stop
say,
the
this
stuff
is,
out, right? It'd be fine. No, just kidding.
If we're up to,
And again, what I would say in our experience with the Wasilla code, it's not like there's a whole bunch that needs to be thrown out. So if we were looking at one of those site plans, there's something that can be simplified with it, but maybe the one main item that would change in it is those parking islands every 12 spaces.
Mhm.
Otherwise, most of what's shown there isn't as weird as it looks. It's just that, you know, parking has a hedge condition. There are all these subtleties to it that maybe we can simplify.
yeah, get rid of some of the subtlety, make it more big crayon.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay. Any objections to leaving committee of the whole? Hearing no objections, we're out of committee of the whole. We're on to public comment. You're public. You got some time to comment. By code, it's 3 minutes, but you need to talk to people more later. There's lots around. Dimitri, right?
Dimitri, correct, yeah. I would be ideal. Earlier had the plat,
Oh,
what I'm
you
gonna
wanna-
reference,
yeah.
some of this, so it's more understandable. Let's zoom in on these two right here, because this one's part of it as well. Zoom out a little bit more, yeah, right there is good, yeah. So my name is Dimitri Fonov. I've been a general contractor here in the valley for since 2008, 2005 when I started construction. I've been licensed since 2010, and I'm also a property manager. And let's see, just quick notes here. So I'm by my specialty when it comes to actually doing the cement excavation and yard work, house sites and that. So I'm very close related with these things that we're doing. I also volunteer at the Wasilla Rural Cemetery here. That's, so I know and I respect nature as much as I can, but I'm also pretty open. I have not had any issues or violations as a general contractor until I started dealing within the city limits. And our company invested some of the money with big dreams of having some iconic buildings here in the Wasilla, especially in downtown. But as soon as we started moving, we pretty much understood that it's not going to be anytime soon, or it never might be an option because of the complexity of how we can use the land that we bought. Simple beginning is this is a vacant lot that has not been ever touched or anything like that. It is the way it's landscape. It has a little higher gravel area around it, but inside it's just a more flatter and deeper where it's been inviting homeless activity, drug activity, and just a dumping of just worse than trash. I mean, there's we can walk there. Since we own the property for several years, each year we would have a couple dump truck loads of just crap that is unpleasant even to touch. And we've been taking it out, but it's keep coming. It's just been attracted. There's broken cars, bicycles, tents, everything you can imagine. Several times I've attempted to get permission to clear this out, whether just to leave it, because we're not in a position right now to develop it and put a building on it. We want to just have it, whether it's just a grassy fool or leave a strip of 15% and the rest of it to be flat, so it's just open and it's not going to attract that activity. I was not able to once get any permission with that because I didn't have expensive house plans, well, the plans that were already architected for a specific building. We're not in that stage yet, but I want to resolve the issue. Was not able to do that to this date. I've talked to the mayor, I've talked to Tina on multiple occasions, and because when you say it's a parking lot, there are so many criterias, and then I don't thought all I wanted is just a resolved issue that is attracting needles, garbage, and everything else on this lot. So I would like to something like this to be a simple fix where it's not, there's not development, there's not building going on, there's nothing, but we want to be able to resolve an issue. So that is my concern number one. I want to do it. I want to do it on my cost. I have certain equipment, but I'm not able to do it. Second thing is, we've also made quite a bit of improvement on this side. Both, the company owns both these lots. And basically it's an existing office building that's been there since '70s and went through several owners. Has, like I was explaining, it has plenty of vegetation. I think last time we calculated it was at 28 or some percent, because there's plenty of them over here. We've been having, ever since this we purchased this building, a serious drainage problem. There's a storm drain right over here, but the water and puddles have been standing because there's a city septic tank and the vault and all that, and has been attracting. And throughout the winter, we've been having problems freezing up, standing water up to 6 inches and things like that. That has caused the maintenance department to come there on a regular basis on weekends. It's been costing them a lot of money. So when this year I was let me reverse it back. We wanted to improve this site. I have hired two very credible firms, Architect, and there was one more lady who specifically designed for landscaping. Both of them, after submitting several drafted professional drawings with what we wanted to do, and even though it was previously approved, was rejected, and I was not able to get permission to finish the parking lot. Moving forward now, we've been having an issue for the past 3 years with the septic system. We wanted to improve the grading so that the water goes through the storm drain. And as we did that, we got the work stop order and multiple fines now, and that I am not able to make it. I want to make it work with the city, but with the complexity, and after two professionals already saying that we can't satisfy these requirements because they overlay, I'm here to voice my opinion that saying for simple sites that are such as this should be simple set of rules. I've expressed that there is vegetation there, but now with this parking being complete as it is, I'm on the subject of daily fines, what I believe of $600, and I've received my first one today. So how do I approach and guide me the correct way? So a project that is already completed, so I could breathe easier at night and be able to feed my family, because if it continues to go like this, and I'm sure somebody is very interested in enforcing this against me, help me understand, make it simple so I could be here putting a good input versus trying to survive, so to speak. And that's what I wanted to address. I was not able to print out anything that I had with me, but I do have name and contacts people and what we do, and I would love to see a few as a board here be able to guide me and guide me the right direction, so I would be able to, not be on the hook and with threats of daily fines and so to speak. And that's my simple situation.
So you, first of all, you found the one committee that has this much power. But you sound like you got your thoughts in order, and
I was not as prepared as I would like to.
you're right. But here's the thing: we have this much power, but we are writing code because these guys work in the industry, and I have an appreciation for where you're at. So we can bank that, and as a public meeting, technically, I'm not even supposed to talk to you. Or I rule. You're supposed to get your 3 minutes and stuff like that. However, we're in staff and committee comments. Guess what? I just went first. But speaking in generalities, my pea brain has some ideas, but I am not part of the city aside from this committee, which was just an appointment. There are some people that have some thoughts. Need to know more. these guys may as well. Yeah. That's what I think I get away with saying under staff and committee comments. You got anything?
I have a question for Tina. Are there is there anything in the Wasilla code that addresses hazardous sites and emergency repairs and conditions?
Not currently.
Problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. Most municipalities have a provision for addressing emergency situations.
Yeah.
Well, yours right there.
Problem.
Yeah.
So a question as well for committee scope, I think, is what has just been presented for us is outside of the scope or what we have been mandated as a committee to deal with. So I think I agree that we have very little power. Tina, what is the process for this? Is this planning and zoning or planning commission, or what is this?
Yeah, code changes go through the planning commission first and then to the city council.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, so
Oh.
they've presented a concern to us, but we have no power to address it. So I think that it would defer to you to direct them in the right direction, perhaps.
Well, it would be, I mean, the way the code's written is at this point, it's in code compliance hands, but it could flip back over to planning's hands from a standpoint. Then there's an appeal of a decision or you change the code. I mean, those are the two options at this point because you're dealing with the way the code's written.
I think one aspect of scope that we do have here is recommendations for ideas like this. Because I never would have thought of that if you didn't show up. I thought it was an idea, but I can see where it's a huge problem.
Yeah, you can definitely do it. Just know that this one is downtown,
Yep.
which is outside of
Does,
that. So it would take us, I mean,
So the
it could be
issue
a
is
broad reaching one, but
broad reaching remedy of emergency or, because
I'm kind of, well, in earthquake, you get an earthquake. The building officials, if it was a building official thing, has the authority to waive provisions so that you can make some emergent, your building in imminent danger of falling down. They can waive the provisions so you can get in there and fix it. So that's, I'm just wondering if there's somewhere else in this whole Wasilla City Code that allows the mayor or planning commission or
well,
something.
there is for emergencies that are physical, like, if there's a gas leak or an explosion or an earthquake.
What about economic emergencies, invasions of?
Well, the storm is that's not the issue for that one, just so you know, that one could be resolved. It's the one to the south that has the homeless issue. And I'd love to see a community that's dealt with that, but I don't know of any community that has a code that says you can bypass the provisions to deal with it. Now, a lot of communities don't prohibit you from clearing your lot before you develop it either, so that's a different conversation. I'm just gonna say, and I've actually talked.
Parks.
I've talked to, well,
I proposed that. I wanted that awesome, beautiful site on that 291 where her mouse is, and there was no go there. So, and I'm already on daily fine list, and I'm not gonna do another one to improve the city, and which I believe I've resolved thousands of dollars worth of maintenance and issue on the 520 over there. Now I am, as of today, I'm on after receiving my first citation, it said it's gonna be ongoing daily, and then it's just gonna put me bankrupt and probably lose the building if you guys want to enforce that. When I
Careful about you guys, because we're not usually.
no, I
City.
specifically now we're talking with the I guess compliance officer, because that's who my man, not but when we were talking about that 15% vegetation, one of the very first things, we never really got it clear. And I said, well, if we will have that 15% requirement, why can this just be used to, because it's already tight. Well, if we start putting anything else, I'm not going to be able to get in and anything else to really practically use if I have to build up additional. As of now, this parking is currently paved. This is a not updated thing. Why am I after putting efforts to resolve the very problem with the drainage and other issues and freezing, being fined for it is my question. I've applied for a permit that was online at that time based on the recommendation of the city mayor. Later found out that that was a wrong permit. So therefore I'm in violation. So I paid $500 for that as well.
Any other staff or committee comments? Okay, well, in terms of our official duties, we're adjourned.
At 5:20,
At
7:20, yeah.
And for a post-meeting comment, I just want to say, I have heard what was just discussed, and it sounds, I don't know the specifics of it, but from a code perspective, it's been heard. Unfortunately for this committee, there's nothing there other than future code changes. I'm sorry that there's not a way that we can be of help.
Yeah, we don't. Okay, that's, we're adjourned. We all.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Have a good night.